Welcome back to the Reusable Space Program. This is episode 16. We're really moving through them now. And you find me in the VAB and we're building something that looks a bit weird, doesn't it? What's that thing on top? Well, we're going to go surveying because we need to find out actually where ore and things like that is. And if we're going to colonize our planets or our moons, or if we're going to go somewhere else, and we're going to start using off Kerbin ore supply or fuel supply, we need to figure out what's going on. So we're going to send these things up. We're going to scan some planetary bodies, Minmus and the Moon, and hopefully start our project of mining. So off we go. So we're just launching up our X5, and you can see this is the standard size. We're not using the wide boy that we used last time. We don't need to. We've got two of our little craft that we've just put together on it. The wide boy is much less stable launch craft than this one, and I'm going to have to look into improving these craft a little bit. But at the moment they serve a purpose. So we do have to go up to about 20 to 30 kilometers before we turn, depending upon a payload, and it gets a bit twitchy, shall we say. But we'll see how it goes. So these things are basically, we've got two of the little scanners that we just built, and they're going to be going to Minmus and they're going to go to Mun, and we're going to try and do some scanning now. One of the nice things about this is it's not just a case of sticking a scanner in orbit. You actually need to put it into a polar orbit. There's, if you actually go and have a look, there's actually some guidelines on the actual item itself in the VAB, I think, which tells you what orbit it requires. So we're putting them into orbit, and they should have enough fuel each to actually do this trip. I will say, yes, technically they are reusable, but they're also not reusable because they don't have docking ports on them. My view is that we're going to retain a scanning of the surface environment, so we don't need a docking port. We're just going to return our craft through the atmosphere. You haven't seen this. We didn't do this in the last episode for any of the return craft, but I thought we'd just show you this one. So it's a much bigger craft than probably some of the earlier ones of these we saw. You can see we wait until we hit the atmosphere, we pull away our solar panels, we activate the RCS. The RCS keeps us in a nice orbit. This craft just used all of its fuel just to kill its speed really early on. Came down really nicely, parachutes open, all the way down, and then we're going to go into the water, which is the safest place for us, and off we go. So we're going to aim to go to Minmus and the Moon. First of all, we're going to go Minmus because it's going to take the longest to get there. So we're going to set up our transfer. Now remember, Minmus is not in the plane of Kerbin, so it's not equatorial, so we're going to have to do some little fiddling, and you can see we get a bit of an intersect there, and then so we've actually put two maneuver nodes here. I put the first one in, which is what we're going to burn now, and then we'll do another burn at our ascending or descending node just to bring us into line with Minmus. And you can see this craft has got plenty of fuel to do this. You need about 1,000 meters per second to really go to Minmus, and we've got that in oodles and spoodles, and probably need less than that. This thing needs to go into a polar orbit, so we actually don't mind coming in an inclined orbit. It makes life actually easier for us a little bit, and the orbit requirements, not too bad. We've got our communication system around Minmus, so this craft will have communication all the way there, all the way back. It's got some little antenna just dug away, hidden away inside the craft. You'll see them pop out later when it actually needs them. Inside, if you went and watched when I was building it, we put some little girder sections in the center there, so we've got some batteries and some transmitters in amongst that, and it's a nice little thing to do. So we burn up there, get a nice intercept, and off it goes. You'll notice I haven't unfurled the scanner yet. We'll wait until we get to Minmus to do that, I think. And it's going to head off on its journey, which is going to take it quite a while. I think it's a few days to get to Minmus. While that's happening, we're setting up another craft here, and this is we're gonna wait. We'll do the next one to the Moon in a while, but while we're waiting for the Minmus transfer and everything, because we're not in a hurry, we're going to set up some fuel. So we're using some of these nice little fuel tanks. I don't have many mods installed on this. I've got I think is it DeMichael's cargo bays, which is what's being used here, and I think this is the some sort of fuel tank. It might be his fuel tank, the DeMichael's fuel tank, or it might be from somewhere else. I'll have to check, but I think I've got a handful of mods, and if you're interested, I'll put them down below, but none like MechJeb or anything like that. So this is just going to be a rendezvous with our little orbital station at the moment because, well, we want fuel. So the tanks that we're sending up, and this is the reason for the mod, is they're purely just liquid fuel tanks. We don't need to send up a vast amount of oxidizer. So I'm basically avoiding sending up a big oxidizer fill tank. I could remove the oxidizer from the tank, but then I'm sending up a big tank that weighs excess. So at the moment I just went for this, and I think it's a nice little compromise. So we're just going to do our thing. You can see bursts of RCS that come up really, when you speed it up, they come up really whiny. It's very interesting. And it's a nice little sort of spherical tank design. It takes up a lot of space, but actually I've compared it to the actual stock tank sizes and things, and it's actually pretty accurate for what we want, which is really good. So we're just going to do the rendezvous with as much of the fuel and RCS of this craft as possible, because, you know, it's basically free. It's going to get disposed of anyway if we don't use it. Comes into rendezvous range. There we go, getting nice and close, and we're going to get this craft as close as possible because we really don't want to waste fuel, and we're actually going to use some of the RCS on these fuel tanks to get it where it goes. It doesn't have its own engine, but it does have RCS, so we've got to get as close as possible. So we get within about 200 meters, and there we go. Pull the tanks out, bit of a movement there, get yourself orientated properly, and then off we go. And so this is going to basically be a fuel store for us, and we're probably going to end up putting a few of these up. We still have the few little mixed fuel tankers floating around in orbit, and they serve a purpose, or they may serve a purpose in the future. I'm going to have to pull them together, I think, and we'll probably put up a specific craft in orbit that's going to pull a lot of fuel together. We'll probably put a proper fuel depot up. This is more of our sort of mixed habitation facility. And you can see we're just going to pull in, and this was a really nice dock, and I used the nav ball for this. If you look at the nav ball, we've got our direction of travel, our direction of orientation, and our location, our target, all lined up really nicely in the middle there, and we just plop it in. If you can do that really nicely easy, the only thing that you could really get would be angle of port and distance, and that would be, if you wanted that, you get something like the one of the add-ons for the docking port alignment. I think Navyfish years ago used to do one. I don't know if he still does. Anyway, just show you the landing of the craft. The wide buoy's coming down, because I don't think we showed you a wide buoy landing in the last episode. So here it comes down, and again over the ocean, nice and easy, plops itself into there. You notice I always leave the top section of cargo bay open just to add a bit of drag up there, and you can see where the components were collected. So this is our Mun craft. This craft we've had in orbit just a little bit longer than the previous one, just because, well, we weren't in a hurry to do anything with it. You know, the Minmus craft's going to take days to get there. The Mun one will take, you know, hours. So it's going to do its burn to Mun. Hopefully it's going to be doing it it's going to have more than enough fuel for it. It should be reasonably easy for both of these craft to get into orbit, and into a nice orbit. The one issue we do have, though, is that this craft, well, it's going to Mun, but we don't actually have communications around Mun at the moment, I don't think. We've put our communication system around Minmus and around Kerbin, but we neglected Mun, and I think we need to fix that, and we need to fix it as soon as possible. However, I was undecided as to what to really do. So here we go, we're coming in, and what we're actually trying to do is put ourselves into a polar orbit. So I tried to look at, do we go over the pole straight away? Then realized that actually, because we don't have communication, we could actually get a real bad blackout. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to put ourselves into just any orbit which got a nice high apoaps just within the sphere of influence. And from there we'll then do our plane change, because it will be nice and cheap. We should have enough fuel, because we've got loads of fuel, so we should be okay there. So the next aim will be, right, we identify our point of where we need to do our plane change, and you can do it pretty much anywhere, because we're equatorial. We can do it anywhere. What we could do, if we were trying to go from polar to equatorial, we actually would need to do it at a specific location, but just increasing your inclination is a lot easier than going into an equatorial plane. So there we go, we're just going along to our highest point. We're doing it when we're as slow as possible, because the slower you go, the more impact you get for your plane change, the less delta V you need to put in. Okay, it's like going around a corner. If you want to go around a corner, it's a lot easier to do it slowly than it is when you're going fast, if you think about that. So we're changing direction, it takes a lot less energy. So off we go, doing our little plane change. There we are, and we're into something that's sort of near to what we want, and we can refine it as much as we want, but we're going to put the scanner out and see if that's working. Ooh, lovely. And what we can do is actually bring ourselves down to a nice sort of circular orbit. And we don't mind actually on the height of this one. There is a set range that you need to be within, but the scanner will tell you if you are within that range for your orbit, which is actually a nice little function of it, so you don't just leave it there and wonder. And also when you actually get the overlay will show you, it will only start to appear when it's valid. So we arrange ourselves. We're just going to try and bring in this orbit to, interestingly, it looked as though it was circular when I stopped it, and then I kept going and oh no, it's not actually circular. So we just checked the delta V requirement there, but we're actually going to do the burn manually. Well, manually. We don't need a maneuver node to do it. We're just going to time it based on, you know, when we get to that periapse or point. So we do our burn, we bring ourselves down, and then we can just balance it out there, and you can watch we're just looking at our thing, we're checking our orbit. That's a nice looking orbit, isn't it? Superb. Okay, wonderful. Now, is the scanner working? Well, it seems to, no data, survey data available for the planet. We need communications. Oh dear. Yep, that's right. This thing ain't going to work until we've got communications, so we better sort that out. So, off we go. Luckily, all this is happening while the Minmus craft is still doing its journey. So we're going to send up another X5 wide boy. This is a very short one because we actually don't need much for these craft to actually work. Now, when we went to Minmus, we took a single craft there with the satellites and unloaded them. Around Kerbin, we sent a craft up, unloaded the satellites. We're going to do something a little different with Mun, because you don't have to just send all your crafts as one. If they've got an engine and they've got fuel tanks, and their engines are all the same efficiency, you might as well just send them individually. And that's what we're going to do here. So we send up this craft, and you can see it's got some of those craft that pretty much are very similar to what we've got around Kerbin. We're going to use a very similar Kerbin system. We're not going to need to use 6, we're only going to use 4, and the idea is we're just going to set up, and I'm going to do this as quickly and painlessly as possible. We're just going to detach all of these craft and get them out. I did consider taking the launcher all the way there, but the fuel reserves were tight, shall we say, and particularly for re-entry, I wanted to have a bit more fuel for slowing down because we'd be carrying a lot of extra speed, so I didn't really trust myself to do that. So we're just going to unload its cargo. Probably would have been better to position those a little higher up inside the craft, but yeah, we're sort of there. And we're just going to wobble them out, not the most delicate of situations. In reality, I only really need 3 of them. Anyway, we land down the cargo craft really easily. You can see it coming through under the water with its vast number of parachutes. And we really need to get on now, once this has landed, with putting those satellites, those communications craft, on a route to Mun. So there we go. Done there. Off we go on to the next bit. So these are going to head their way to Mun. We're just going to set each one of them up with basically a maneuver node to head to Mun. And this is going to happen. We're going to stagger them. I could have rushed them and tried to get them all one after the other on the same orbit if I was being really clever. And I think we would just about have had enough time to do it. However, that then leads to the point where when they end up at Mun, you're likely to have overlapping periods where you're going to need to do burns and it becomes inefficient and things like that. So what we actually did was, every time they went around the planet, one of them got sent off to Mun. And you can see there I'm just playing around with my burn there, and I'm not even following the maneuver node at this point because the burn takes quite a while, and there we go. We just want to come near Mun. That's all I want, and I'm aiming for about 400 to 500 kilometers orbit height. I think all of them bar one got that sort of 500 range was the idea. One of them got a slightly lower one, and later on you will actually see in future episodes why that became a little annoying, and that craft ended up being sort of a spare, shall we say. I actually only need about 3 of them in orbit. I'm sending 4 just in case we have a problem, but you only really need 3 to go in equatorial orbit around the Mun, because it's not a massive body and we're going to be quite high up with our transmitters, so we can cover pretty much all of it. In fact, you could get away with 2 just about. So there we go. Just going to rename the craft so that they're actually all named properly, and you can see there, bringing them in, looking at just getting these burns on. Anyway, we're now back in Minmus. So those craft are on their way to Mun. Our Minmus craft is now arriving. And we've actually done a little bit of a maneuver node here just to take us underneath the pole, the southern pole of Minmus. We could have gone into a light orbit of Minmus and then change the inclination, but we've got the fuel, and I just wanted to try a different approach and see what it was going to look like. So here we go. We're going to just pull ourselves up. We've gone into a sort of a polar type inclination, and then we're just going to pull ourselves up because I don't want to be too far away from Minmus. There is a set range for these scanners. It has to be within a certain distance. So our periapse is now going to be within that range, and then we're just going to circularize when we get there, you see, into a nice polar orbit. And so we're actually doing this in the South Pole. Problematically, we didn't have signal at that moment because the communication system we've got, there we go, we had to put the actual things out. Note to self, maybe should have checked doing that with the craft around the moon, because it might have been okay. But we need a communication system there anyway, so that's done. So there we did our little burn, and it is in orbit now. I'm going to train our little sensor on there, and you can actually see, there we are, scanning the moon for all of its riches and joy. So as we have a good look at what's on the equator, and I think that there might be our target, a nice little area that we could have some fun with. It's got a little bit of rich ore supply in there. While we have a look at that, we have to plan for next time and setting up some more advanced equipment. So until then, have a great one.